On today's episode of Crimes That Shook Sports, we will be covering Gregory Hallman, a once promising outfielder for the Seattle Mariners who was tragically discovered in a pool of his own blood in the Netherlands. The story of Hallman is both complex and morally challenging, as the facts have caused the public to become split on the case. Born on August 26, 1987 in Haarlem, Netherlands, Greg Hallman was raised to become a professional baseball player. Father Eddie Hallman was an accomplished professional player in the Netherlands and also on the national team. Eddie saw great potential in Greg and his brother, Jason, but Greg showed a different kind of level of skill early on, and he made his professional debut in the Netherlands at age 16 for Kinheim in his hometown of Haarlem in 2003. As a 16-year-old rookie, Hallman recorded a league-leading 6 triples and primarily played first base for his team. Next season, Hallman came back and put together a much-improved season, batting .358 while leading the league with 4 home runs. Hallman won both the league MVP and was also named Most Promising Dutch Player, as Major League Baseball scouts began to attend his games. Fast forward 3 years, and Hallman continues to impress in the Netherlands, earning himself a provisional roster spot for the 2006 World Baseball Classic. But unfortunately, Hallman was not selected as a final member of the roster. In 2007, Hallman returned to the national team, and this time led the offense, hitting .357 through 6 games, and winning the European Baseball Championship, which came with a qualification for the 2008 Summer Olympics and the 2009 World Baseball Classic. The team ultimately lost 6 games in the group stage and fell out of the competition, while Hallman struggled at the plate in the 2008 Summer Olympics. While Hallman was impressing with the Netherlands national team overall, he was also attempting to break into the ranks of the MLB. Hallman signed a contract with the Minnesota Twins in 2003 at the age of 16, but the contract would later be voided the next year, which later allowed the Seattle Mariners to sign Hallman to a minor league contract. The Mariners made Hallman convert to the outfield full-time, and the switch became beneficial for Hallman, who batted .438 against left-handed pitchers during his 2004 season in the Rookie League. In 2008, with the High-A High Desert Mavericks, Hallman began to truly find his stride in the minor leagues, batting .269 with 19 home runs and 53 runs batted in. Hallman was called up to Double-A to play for the West Tennessee Diamond Jacks, where he hit another 10 home runs before the end of the season. Hallman finished the year with 29 home runs and 31 stolen bases, which earned him the honors of being the top Mariners minor league player that season. Hallman would regularly return at the end of the seasons to the Netherlands, where he would then play additional games for his boyhood team Kinheim and tear apart baseballs. After launching 29 home runs in a single season, Hallman became focused on hitting for power, and watched his average dip to .210 in 2009, with a team-high 183 strikeouts in 121 games. But the outfielder still hit 25 home runs and earned himself quite the reputation. Pitchers hated facing Hallman, and the outfielder was hit 15 times throughout the season. Hallman began the next season at AAA with the Tacoma Rainiers and batted .243, improving his average while launching 33 home runs and winning the Pacific Coast League Championship. Hallman was called up by the Mariners at the end of the season alongside 3 other teammates. Hallman ended up batting .138 with 11 strikeouts before finishing the season at the MLB level. In 2011, Hallman started with Tacoma again before being called up to replace Michael Saunders on June 3rd. Hallman recorded 2 home runs before going hitless in 19 consecutive at-bats, which led to the Mariners sending the outfielder back to the minor leagues, without realizing he had already taken his final major league at-bat. As mentioned previously, Hallman would travel back home following the end of the season, and often Hallman would stay with his family. After putting together a career best average of 299 in Tacoma, Hallman returned to the Netherlands in 2011 and decided to stay with his brother, Jason, at his apartment in Rotterdam that the two had recently bought together. Jason also played baseball, but never quite had the same talent that Greg had, which led to some issues in Jason's personal life. On November 21st, 2011, police responded to an urgent call in Rotterdam and found the 24-year-old nearly dead at the scene. The Seattle Mariners outfielder later died while paramedics attempted to save him from a laceration to his carotid artery and passed away from his wounds within minutes. His promising career was cut short in his own apartment, and his brother became the prime suspect, despite being the closest person to him in his life. Jason and Greg talked every day throughout the season, and Jason attended many of Greg's international showcases. The duo even got matching tattoos on each other that said "Brothers for Life." At the time, the Netherlands were by far the top producer of MLB talent, while still not putting up quite the same numbers that many of the Caribbean islands were. Regardless, becoming professional out of the Netherlands was not impossible, but it was a difficult task at the time. Greg wanted to be part of growing the sport in Europe to allow for other generations to have an easier pathway to the MLB. Jason was arrested and charged with murder, and as shocking as discovering who the perpetrator was, the motive Jason had was even more shocking to the public, because frankly, there wasn't one. Jason reportedly had begun smoking cannabis regularly to cope with the fact that his baseball career would never be quite as successful as he wanted, and as his brother had also dreamed of. Jason lost his national team spot 3 years prior and had been stuck in neutral, while his brother continued to work his way through the minor leagues. Jason lost his spot on the national team after kicking a soccer ball at a ticket station in Italy. The police intervened, wanting to know who caused the disturbance, and upon returning to the Netherlands, Jason was singled out and kicked off the team, despite there being a group of teammates who were also involved with the situation. 6 months before killing Greg, Jason had been working his way back onto the national team full-time, but was cut due to his poor defense, which effectively ended his international baseball career. Jason began studying economics and moved to Rotterdam into an apartment Greg would also stay at. Jason had been under intense stress that he had placed upon himself for failing to make a career out of baseball, and after blasting music in his room one night, he snapped. 5 days before the incident, Jason began to act strange and was notably screaming incoherently in the locker room of his new team, Neptunus. Jason began to suffer from schizophrenic episodes, and reportedly would use music to calm these episodes. However, this fact has been heavily disputed, as you will see shortly. Jason began to stop sleeping and would lie awake in pools of his own sweat at night. Greg began speaking to Jason less and focusing more on baseball, which was becoming a year-round sport for Greg, and it consistently took him away from the Netherlands and home more and more. Jason coincidentally began to decline in his mental state faster and faster as Greg was gone, and in the days leading up to the murder, Jason began to struggle to put sentences together, but told teammates and family members, "I am alone," before committing a terrible mistake. On the day of the murder, Jason left the house in the early hours of the morning without a key, and he returned 45 minutes later, kicking at the door and screaming for someone to let him in. Greg let him in, and Jason turned on the stereo and began playing music. Greg told Jason to turn down his music, and Jason immediately responded by swinging a butterfly knife behind him, which ended up striking the neck of his brother. Jason ran downstairs and stood outside in shock as the paramedics and police arrived. Jason shouted, "I want to see my brother, I am alone," as the police arrested him. Jason was locked in a padded room, reportedly tearing his clothes off and punching the walls for hours after his arrest. While the death of Greg Hallman sent shockwaves through the MLB, the case was not necessarily over. Jason was released from custody on August 16, 2012, after prosecutors agreed that Jason was suffering from psychosis at the time, which was likely induced by his cannabis use. Prosecutors also pointed out how psychosis ran in the Hallman family, with his uncle Samuel suffering from psychotic episodes during his life. Samuel also committed a murder just 3 years prior to Jason killing Greg in a very similar fashion. During the original sentencing, his parents stated, "We have already lost one son, and we do not want to risk losing both," and pushed for Jason to be released to a mental facility. After 2 weeks of supervised mental health care, Jason was acquitted as the court felt there was little to no chance of another episode occurring, and stated the situation was circumstantial. The death of Hallman has also been a controversial one in the media, as many false narratives have been pushed over time and facts have been skewed. ESPN writer Wright Thompson was at the forefront of such narratives after publishing a massive and controversial story about the days leading up to the murder. Thompson stated that Jason had been tormented by, quote, killers that he was reportedly seeing, which was likely a schizophrenic episode he was referencing. However, Naomi Hallman, the sister of Greg and Jason, disputes this fact, as the medical professionals who have worked with Jason never indicated that that was what he had suffered from. Thompson also published this story before Jason's trial was finished, and while the story likely did not affect the outcome, it painted a very dark and jealous image that would have given Jason a motive to murder his brother Greg after his own baseball career fell apart. Greg's number 26 was retired by the Everett Aqua Sox in 2012 following his death, and Greg became the first MLB professional to pass away in the Netherlands. To this day, Hallman is remembered as a great player, a great person, and a talent that could have found steady footing in the MLB after enough time. Greg was considered to be the easiest person in the clubhouse to get along with, and often helped others when he did not have to.